Hello everybody. So we wanted to make you a video to tell you our story so that you're not bored. Alright, so where should we start, babe?
Try at the beginning.
Okay.
I remember the first time I saw him, he was trying to be the youth guy on our team, and I don't know what year it was. Back in 2009 maybe. And I remember my good friend Jess, which she's in our wedding by the way, if you haven't seen her. I was up in the front of the church with Jess, and we knew that some guy was coming to check out our team because he wanted to be the youth guy. And he came in and he had these poofy hair and big sideburns. And we just looked at each other and we're like, so he wants to be our youth guy? That was the first time I saw him.
I was accepted as a children's minister instead of a youth minister. And so it was a fun skit, but that was the first time I actually talked to her, but I don't actually remember meeting her on that day.
Yeah.
I was distracted.
We're just glad he was animated and he was a children's minister on our team.
Basically, our first year traveling, Shawntay and I couldn't stand each other.
Nope. He was a jerk.
And she was really uptight.
No, I wasn't.
Yes. So we didn't hang out much. Like I said, I was a children's minister, and Shawntay was a family assistant for the Finch family, and their daughter Marley was our flower girl today.
Yes. I've known Marley longer than I've known Evan.
It's pretty cool. But anyway, as the first year progressed, God just rocked me to the core and completely changed who I was 100%. True? Yeah.
From what I knew, yeah.
Yeah. And so I
still didn't like you.
Our leadership came to Shawntay.
Mm-hmm. Ryan and Ben came and sat me down, and they told me that they wanted me to be the leader in base camp. And so that was a hard adjustment, but they told me that Evan was supposed to be my right hand. He's supposed to help me out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he did.
Yeah. So Ben sat me down and he's like, look, Evan, you're second in command now. And so your job is to be Shawntay's best friend. So I was like, okay. And he's like, you have to be Shawntay's best friend. Whatever she says, you back it up. Whatever she wants to do, you're there for her. You're her guy. And so I was like, because I was just so blessed that they didn't just kick me off the team, and they were letting me be on the team, and not only that, but being second in command for the children's ministry. So I was like, I'm going to do this job, and I'm going to do it well. So I decided I was going to be Shawntay's best friend. By the end of the second year, I was confident that me and Shawntay, pretty good friends on the team. And she was just not on the same page. But I'm like, man, Shawntay, she's cool. And like every once in a while in my second year, I would just catch myself thinking like, man, Shawntay is pretty. But then I'd be like, whoa, no, you can't think that. She's Shawntay. Can't think that about Shawntay. So anyway, we get to the second year, or we get to the third year. And over the summer, in between my second and third years, I had come to a rare place in my thinking in life in which I was content in my singleness. So, I mean, like, I was just vacuuming in my basement one day, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm content being single. This is amazing. And so I just started praying to God. I'm like, you know what, God? This is cool. It's just going to be me and you this year. I don't need no woman. And so, like, and I'm just like, you know what? First year team members aren't allowed to date, so you know what? I'm not going to be able to like anybody who comes on here who's a woman. I can't do that. And I'm not going to like anybody who's returning on the team because it's only like Shawntay. I'm not going to like her. So I just, I decided, God, I'm just going to make a vow. I'm going to make a vow to you right now that, I'm not going to pursue a woman this whole year until the next summer. And right as I did that, the Holy Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, do you remember Ecclesiastes 5 verses 1 through 7, where it says that, it's better to not make a vow than make a vow and not be able to keep it? And I'm just like, yeah, God, but this is different because it's for you. So after I started praying that Shawntay, would receive a husband from God, like the next church or the church after that, I began to develop special feelings for Shawntay. So, and like I'd be like noticing her, and I'd get all these butterflies in my stomach, and my heart would beat faster, and I'd get all hot and sweaty whenever I got around her. I'm just like, God, yes. And I'd just be like, God, that can't be right, because that's Shawntay Celestino, and I am Evan David, and that can't be a thing. So, over the next couple of churches, I'm just like, oh. And so of course I had to share with my best friend Luke Johnson, who's my best man, and I'm just like, Luke, I think I like Shawntay. What do I do? And so, and I'd be praying to God, and I'd be saying, but God, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? And all these excuses about why I shouldn't like Shawntay. And God replied with the same thing for every one of my excuses. He said, so? And I was like, oh, good point, Lord. So a couple churches later, I had resolved in my mind and heart, like, by golly, I like Shawntay, and I want to pursue her. And then I was reminded, well, Evan, what about that vow you made not to pursue a girl? I'm like, no! So, oh man, it was terrible. So the next person, besides Luke, after we came back from Christmas break, the next person to find out besides Luke was Brennan Miller. He was like, so do you like anybody, Evan? And I'm like, can't lie. So I can't say no. So I said, yes. And he's like, who is it? I'm like, well, you just have to guess. And so this was one of my favorite memories ever, because it's so funny, because he just decided, he guessed people, and he guessed every single person on the team except for Shawntay. He guessed Sarah Johnson, who was already married
to your best friend.
To my best friend. And he's like, not Sarah. I'm like, no! He guessed her before he guessed Shawntay. And so finally, he gets to the end of the list. He's like, but that only leaves no. And I'm just like, it would be the most unlikely scenario, wouldn't it, Brennan?
One of my favorite memories of Evan is when we went on this ropes course as children's ministers, and he had asked me if I would be his partner on the course, because I thought, you pair up with the other person's watching to make sure you're safe. But then they challenge us and say, if you want it even harder, you guys could both be up there and be attached by a rope. So every single person decides to do that. So we're like, okay.
So we're tied together.
So we're tied together with a 4-foot rope. And he swings on the rope. And I really get tight. And all I can do is scream and laugh. Because he flung me off. And all of a sudden, I'm swinging.
I just yanked her right off the...
That was my favorite memory. I wish that would have been recorded on the phone. Sarah asked me, so how are you doing? How are you doing with being single, or is there anybody on the team? I was like, actually, no, I'm doing pretty good. It's not even a struggle. I didn't think anything of it. And then she comes and asks me, like, probably not even 6 months later. And we went out for lunch, catching up, and then before we leave, I'm getting ready to get up and leave. And she's like, before you leave, I have one more question to ask you. I'm like, okay. So I sit down, and she's like, where are you at with your relationship with Evan? I'm like, well, he's like my best friend on the team. And then she's like, going on and asking more questions. And she's like, well, I wouldn't be surprised if he likes you. And I'm like, goodness, no.
After that, I called her up while I was doing something, and I said, Shawntay, I like you, and I'd like to come up to where you live in Wisconsin and get to know you. So she said, yes, I could. And then I went up there and hung out with her and met Andy and Sana. What's your pastor's name?
Pastor Schultz.
And Pastor Schultz. And I got to stay in his house.
Yep. He drank bleach there.
I drank bleach. I called my mom at like 2 o'clock in the morning, afraid I was going to die because I drank bleach.
They were treating their well, and Evan took his allergy pills and then called me and said, I think I just drank bleach.
Yeah, because they told me that. And
what do I do?
They told me not to drink from the spigot, but I was thinking I'd pop my allergy pill. big old gulp of water.
Did I tell him drink lots of water? Did I load it or drink some milk?
Yep. So we decided that we would wait a month and pray, and I only needed like 2 weeks. And
just take it slow and get to know each other. So there's a lot of Skype.
Yep. So we had finally decided, yes, we want to date. So step number 1 in dating, actually step number 2, I guess, besides figuring out mutual interest, is ask the dad. So Shawntay gives me her father's number, and I call him up and leave several phone messages.
Because I tell him my dad doesn't return phone calls, so I give him the house number and his cell phone number, and he calls the house number, and I tell him, if you get the house phone, they don't pick up, so you need to tell them you're calling and who you are so they pick up. The answering machine picks up, and it freaks him out.
Yeah, because
he
it's
thinks
like,
it's my dad.
Hello.
Please leave a message.
And I was just like, I'm up on my top bunk in my cabin with all the guys from the team are there, and the phone rings, and I'm like, oh, it must be Shawntay. And I look at it, and I had his number in my, my contacts, so his name comes up. I'm like, oh! So I jump off the bed and run into the bathroom, where all important decision making and conversations happen. So we talk, and we had a meeting. Let's say we were having a meeting. So.
Anyway, so you talked to my dad.
So I talked to him and asked permission to date Shawntay, and he said yes. And so the next day I took Shawntay out.
I tried to.
And there was lots of miscommunication with the team to which we belong, and we were both very frustrated. But it all worked out for the better because I took her out to the Riverside Walk in Niles, Michigan.
Yes.
I love swinging benches.
He does. He always asks me, do they have a porch swing?
So we see a porch swing just because Niles Riverwalk has porch swings.
On their park.
Yep. So we go over and we sit on the bench. I'm like, let's go sit down on that. So we sit on the bench and we begin to swing, and it sounds like... So
I just started laughing.
I'm just like, well, this is romantic. So we go to the next one over. Same thing. So I'm just like, we just won't swing. We'll just sit here. So then after all that stuff, I'm just like, Shawntay, will you be my girlfriend? And some other stuff like that.
Talked to your dad last night.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep. So, and she said,
we travel on the road, go a lot of places, and then we get to go to Hawaii because I went home for Christmas break, and Evan's Christmas present from his parents were to come out and visit me.
Yep.
So he got to meet my family for the first time.
So I walk off the plane, and we go out into the front of the Honolulu airport, and the car pulls up, and inside is my new sister-in-law, Rochelle Celestino, who comes out and puts lays on me, and then she starts dancing and singing a Hawaiian song. So we pull up to Shawntay's house, and outside is her dad in the front yard with 3 of his best friends. And this is the first time he's ever going to meet me in person. And so I'm just like, well, this isn't intimidating. Not only am I going to be judged by her father, but his 3 best friends. So I get out and I meet him, and he's really cool, and they're all really cool, and it was really cool.
Yeah, so we hung out for that week, went fishing, went to the beach, went sightseeing.
Stand-up paddleboarding. I got to see some sea turtles. It's cool.
Yep, we have it somewhere.
Yeah. So, anyway, he gave me his blessing and permission to ask Shawntay to marry me. So that was really cool. And so then we got back on the road. We broke up, and then we got back together. And then
we broke up for a while. And that was really hard. So we're back together around October of this last year.
Yeah.
And I was in North Carolina. And then I moved up here in December. And
I was still, I knew I wanted to be with Shawntay, but I was still, kind of doing the roller coaster thing, and I was asking people advice, because I was, like I said, we broke up for a reason, and should we really be getting back together? Will this really work? And so I was asking everybody, and you know what really just clinched it for me was when I emailed my mentor, Ryan Loving, who married us, and asked him, his advice on the thing, and he's like, you know what, Evan? I don't think you're ready to be in a relationship. I don't think you should date Shawntay, because when I was going to marry my wife, nobody had to tell me whether or not I should or shouldn't. I knew I was going to. And so I don't think you should. And so that email was like, you're right. I'm not listening to you. I'm going to marry Shawntay. So him telling me I shouldn't pursue her was what clinched it. I'm like, yes, I'm definitely going to. Thank you, Ryan. So I woke up the next morning and I'm like, I'm doing it today. Because I'm like, I can't wait any longer. I got permission. I got to go. Plus, Shawntay,
I already knew about the ring.
Yeah, so she already knew about the ring. So I'm like, she wants to be surprised. So if I don't do it now, she's going to find out. And I won't be able to surprise her, so I'm like, I'm doing it today. So that's when, I started making all these phone calls to my pals Brennan and Ross. Evan decides one day he wants to propose to Shawntay. So
it's so unlike him to just be spontaneous, too.
Right, exactly.
So this was shocking.
Yeah. So he did. He gave us an hour or two notice, that he wanted us to come and to go with them on this date and to photograph and video them. So we just dropped everything we were doing and we went.
Yeah. Cut out of class early.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Well, we got permission.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah. And so we go to the
South Bend Art Museum.
Yeah. The Centennial Center. Yeah. And
fancy place.
We go there, we're looking at all this art and stuff, and Evan's kind of nervous the whole time. And we didn't really have a solid plan because we didn't really get to talk to Evan. So we're like, I don't know when he's going to do this. We have our cameras around taking pictures of these art things that we really didn't care about either.
We were kind of in cahoots, so we're like, hey, yeah, let's take a group picture, everybody. Yeah. And this is something we do when we travel together, so this wasn't like weird either.
No.
After the group picture, Evan starts pulling me to the middle of the room and wants to go look at something, but there's nothing on the other side, and it's a huge room, and I'm like, okay, and that's when I started figuring out something is going on.
So I pulled her over to the middle of the room. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I just knew I wanted to ask her to marry me, and this is the prettiest place I could find to do it in South Bend in the winter. So
freezing cold, first day of spring.
Yeah. So pulled her out to the middle, and I started talking to her. I'm like, do you know I love you?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. I'm like, do you know how much I love you? And she's like, yeah.
You tell me all the time.
Yeah, and so then I got down on one knee and pulled out my ring that I had.
My ring?
Yes. And so the first words out of Shawntay's mouth are
you serious?
And I say, is this a real ring?
I just looked at it.
And she said, yes. And I said, well, then I'm serious.
Then apparently I got a really big smile on my face, and he stood up, and I hugged him and told him yes.
Well, first I asked her, will you marry me? And then she said yes. So, but yeah, that's how it went. And like, I don't even remember getting down on one knee. I'm just like, how did I get down here? Because I'm just like.
It was quick and short, and I hugged him, and then Ross and Brennan were there and
taking pictures.
Yes, taking lots of pictures.
It was great. So. And
Brennan started singing at one point.
Yep, like he does.
Can you feel the love tonight?
We have that on film too, so you can just put that on in there.
Can you feel the love tonight?
So then we met some friends for Korean that night. First real date we had, the first time we started dating, was at that Korean restaurant.
Yep.
Sketchy place, but really good
really
food.
Good food. So
that's our story. And I guess we'll see what happens in the rest of our life.
Yep. Thank you guys for coming and being part of our special day.
And hopefully we'll be in there soon. Hopefully.
Yes.